started to the first full day of what's your no, I was born with a
Good evening. I gotta get. Good evening. Thank you for coming to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you plan on speaking, make sure you say your name clearly and your address into the microphone and write your name on the sheet at the podium. The next meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals will be April 16th, 2024 in this room at 6:30 p.m. In case of a fire or other emergency, please follow the exit signs that are provided in this room and throughout Town Hall. Upon exiting this room, the main exits are located in the front and rear of this building. Do not use the elevator during an emergency event. This meeting is being recorded and will stream live online. If you do not want to stay and hear the results on any item before the Zoning Board of Appeals tonight, you can call the town clerk's office tomorrow morning after 9 a.m. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Bray?
Present.
Member Schubert?
Present.
Member Phillips? Present. Member Parker? Member Gergen?
Present.
Thank you. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Moved by Member Schubert. Do I hear a second? Seconded by Member Gergen. All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Member Phillips has abstained. That item has passed 4-0. We have 5 items on tonight's agenda. The first item has to do with property 1265 Niagara Falls Boulevard. That is a temporary use permit for sturdy built sheds. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Ari Goldberg from the law firm of Barclay Damon for the applicant, Sturdy Built Sheds. Although I think many of the faces on this board are new, this is the 6th temporary use permit renewal request from this applicant. The first temporary use permit was issued in February of 2013, and it's been pretty much renewed every 2 years since then. This is for a location of seasonal sheds. It's those sheds you see, those Amish-built sheds that are on various sites similar to this all throughout the area. This one's located at the corner of Maple and Niagara Falls Boulevard, just on the northwest corner of the Boulevard Mall property. Temporary use permits, the renewal in this case is governed by Section 886 of the Zoning Code. All those criteria are responded to specifically in the application materials. The general theme of those criteria is compliance with the comprehensive plan and will the temporary use permit impact public safety, health, and welfare. It is compliant with the with the comprehensive plan in the sense that this has been a successful location for sturdy built sheds. They've been here for multiple years, so you're inviting business into the town, increasing a strong tax base, and you're giving amenities to the citizens where they can view these sheds. An important note regarding impact on health, safety, and welfare. The sheds here are for display purposes only. A customer can enter into the site, view the sheds, go to the office on site, and then order a shed. There's no shed on the site that's going to be leaving the premises and be delivered to a home. So therefore, there's no additional truck traffic once the sheds are dropped off for the season. That season is April 1 to October 31, about 8 months. And traditionally, the temporary use permit request has been for 2 years. And as many members of the town, members of this board know, the Boulevard Mall property is currently going through condemnation proceedings with the town. We don't want to interfere with that. We want to let Amherst proceed with its process. And my understanding is those condemnation proceedings may be over and the town may take title to the properties at the beginning of 2025. That would therefore impact the second year of this temporary use permit renewal request. So to that end, instead of the traditional 2 years, we're only seeking 1 year tonight. And to the extent that that's a condition on approval, we're amenable to that. So just to modify it and be clear, this is a 1 year temporary use permit renewal request for April 1 to October 31. Here to answer any questions of the board and the public.
So I received a letter from Lori Stillwell, the Amherst Urban Renewal Agency Administrator.
Yep.
She asked that a condition be added to this, any approval, that sturdy built sheds will vacate 1265 Niagara Falls Boulevard property prior to October 31st, 2024, if notified by the Town of Amherst Urban Renewal Agency that it has initiated proceedings under the New York State Eminent Procedure Law, Article 4, to condemn the property. Would you have an issue if we added that condition to this approval?
I'm a little fuzzy on the initiation of the proceedings. Aren't they already initiated?
I don't understand what that said. Just read.
She's saying that if the property is closed off as condemned, because it's already in proceedings, then she
Yeah.
wants them vacating.
Mm-hmm.
Condemned for the purposes of eminent domain doesn't mean condemn the property. It means take title to it. And my understanding is those proceedings are in action. They're just subject to the ongoing litigation between JCPenney and the town.
Wouldn't this be a moot point at that?
Well, then I would grant this until Amherst takes title of the property.
We're also fine with just the 1 year.
Yeah,
So beginning in 2 weeks to the end of October.
2 years before they take title.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then we'll make the decision at this time next year to reapply. So our position, just to modify the condition that's proposed, we're amenable to a 1 year temporary use permit. 1 year, of course, in our case, is April 1 to October 31.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any questions for the applicant? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Is there any member of the board who would like to make a motion? I have a motion from member Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's been approved for a 1 year permit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second item on today's agenda has to do with property at 280 Harding Road regarding a variance for a lot width. Please state your name and address into the microphone clearly.
Name is Daniel Jordan. Address is 280 Harding.
All right, present your application.
Thank you. I'm here to seek a variance on my property at 280 Harding Road. I purchased it a few months ago. Some background, the entire purchase is a parcel that's 180 feet wide, and it's split up into 2 lots, one which is 120 feet wide by 140 feet deep, and the other one that's 60 feet wide by 140 feet deep. The one that's 60 feet wide is that purple area, that is not relevant to today's variance request other than the fact that I'm the owner of that property. So the property that I'm seeking a variance on, the property immediate to the north and the south are both owned by me. So just going to run through the 5 tests. So hoping that by the end of these remarks, it'll be clear that, this won't alter the character of the neighborhood, has no feasible alternatives, is not substantial, will not have adverse effects on the physical environment or conditions of the neighborhood. And while it may be self-imposed, that does not necessarily disqualify it from approval. So I'm just going to try and, again, give some facts here. Again, bought 280 Harding in January. It's 180 feet wide in a neighborhood that's zoned R4. So all of the houses in that neighborhood are laid out at one house every 60 feet. And my proposal is to basically build one house every 60 feet because, again, I have 180 foot of frontage. There's one house. I'd like to build 2 more. And again, I'm the owner of the property immediately to the north and the south. I spoke to all the neighbors in the area. Nobody voiced any concern when I first reached out to them. I gave them my contact information in case they changed their mind, and I haven't heard anything otherwise. So the specific request here is to subdivide 280 in half and have one parcel be 65 feet, so it meets the R4 code, and one parcel would be 55 feet wide, and that's what I'm asking your permission to do, and I would like to build a house on the parcel that's 55 feet wide. So I'm just going to run through the test. Will it change the character of the neighborhood? No, it will not, because the character of the neighborhood are single-family homes laid out at one house every 60 feet, and that is essentially what I'm trying to do here is have one house every 60 feet. Additionally, I'll be the builder of these houses. So while one will be sitting on a lot that's 65 feet, one that's 55 feet, I could basically play with the spacing so that from the road, it doesn't look like one lot is narrower than the other. Test 2 has no feasible alternatives. To my knowledge, there are no other alternatives that violate the code to a lesser extent. If any of the members of the board have thoughts on how I could achieve my desired outcome of, putting 3 houses on this parcel, I'm, happy to hear your recommendations. In the spirit of transparency, doing 2 60-foot lots was discussed as another option, but the way I understand it is that would require 2 variances for 2 non-conforming lots, and it was explained to me that the zoning board prefers to go with the option that requires the least amount of variances. So if that's incorrect, feel free to correct me. Test number 3 is non-substantial. As I stated before, this will mean one house every 60 feet, which is the norm in the neighborhood. And so in my opinion, asking for relief which meets the norm is non-substantial by nature. It will not adversely affect the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. I actually spoke to the person whose property is most impacted, so they're directly east of the back lot line of the parcel that would be 55 feet, and she was actually excited about it. She was pretty happy to hear that somebody was going to build new houses in the neighborhood. And then finally, self-imposed. While it is self-imposed, in my opinion, its ability to pass the aforementioned test does not disqualify it from approval. I also think it's worth adding that this is a unique and unlikely to repeat itself situation because I actually own the pieces of property that are going to be most impacted by this area variance. In addition, this neighborhood is already built out. These are some of the last remaining vacant lots these are basically the last 2 remaining lots in the neighborhood. The purple one is grandfathered in as legal nonconforming, and the 55-foot one is the one that I'm asking for relief on. And then again, to repeat myself, I spoke to all the neighbors in the area. Nobody had any concerns or expressed any sort of dissatisfaction with my plans. And I gave them my contact information so they could reach out to me if they changed their mind. And nobody has done that to date. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody on the board have a question for applicant Jordan?
I'm just having a little trouble following.
Yep.
If we look at the the purple, on the right side, the purple, we move up from there. The bottom lot is at the 65?
Yeah,
And the
so,
next one would be
and,
the 55?
may I walk over to the,
Yeah.
You could use the pointer as well.
I just can't read the dimensions.
so the purple lot is 60 feet wide. And this, where the red dashed lines are, that lot is 55 feet wide. And the one above that would be 65 feet wide.
Okay, that wasn't clear. So,
But right now, those two white lots are one lot.
Exactly, yeah. Right now, right here, it looks like this, where we have this purple lot is its own lot, and this 120-foot lot is its own single parcel. And I'm asking permission to cut it in half and build a house on it. And I was told that the best way to do that would be to make 165 and 155.
and the one lot already has a house on it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So the one that is going to be conforming already has the house
Yes,
sitting
ma'am.
there, okay.
Is there any other questions? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Does anybody on the board have a comment or want to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Move for approval by member Schubert. Seconded by member Gorgon. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Item passed 5-0.
Thank you.
The third item on today's agenda is 757 Hopkins. That is a variance for a setback. Would you please say your name and address clearly into the microphone and present your application?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Palumbo. I'm with the law firm of Block, Longo, Lamarca, and Brzezinski, and I represent the Center for Jewish Life, and the rabbi is with me this evening. We can go to the next slide. So as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, the property is located at 757 Hopkins Road in the office building district and has been there for a number of years. You're all probably very familiar with it. You can see it up there on the screen. Next. What's being planned here is an addition to the building off to the east or the rear of the property. They would be adding approximately 3,700 square feet to the east of the property. Next. So the question is why? And this has been in the works for a number of years. And one of the reasons why is that they have found that they have reached out to the community and are providing services to many of the Jewish organizations in the area. And you can see here the number of different outlets that they have: the Kosher Meal on Wheels, the High Hebrew School, the Early Childhood Center, the Family Shul, and so on and so forth. These are things that take place on a regular, constant basis, which is what has prompted the need for this expansion. So we can go to the next slide, but while you're doing that, essentially what will happen is one half of the building will be used for the religious services, and the other half of the building will be used for all of the things that we just talked about, meeting with the community and Holocaust survivors and their families, which they do again on a regular basis. So that's the nature and the reason behind the expansion. And to go into the standard, and I'll do that briefly and hopefully quickly, but you all are very familiar with the standard for an area variance such as this. The question is the benefit to the applicant versus the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the community. And the variance from the town of Amherst provisions that we're looking for have to do with setbacks on all three sides. So on the east side, or the rear of the property, that setback is 30 feet, and the building is proposed to be 18 feet off of the property line. The variances for the side lots on the north and the south, we have a 5-foot variance on the, a 5-foot setback on the north side, and we have a 0 lot line variance on the south side. So on the south side, we have had discussions with our neighbor about acquiring a small additional piece of property which would measure approximately 5 feet. So that setback would equate to the same thing that we're proposing on the north side. If the board grants the variances, then that transaction will take place. There was no point in doing that unless the expansion went through. So those are the two variances, or actually the three variances we're looking for, both the rear and both sides. Next, the standards that we're talking about. Number one, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood by the addition of this building and the variances that we hope you will grant. And we would submit to the board that we do not think that this is going to be an undesirable change. And one of the reasons for that is the expansion itself will not be immediately adjacent to the office buildings on either side of us. It'll be actually in the rear. My client, the rabbi, has had conversations with the folks who live in the residences to the east, and to date we have had no one indicate to us, either individually or through the homeowners association, that they are opposed to this expansion. Now, certainly somebody may be here this evening who will speak differently, but the conversations that we have had have all been positive. So we can go to the next slide. Whether the benefits sought can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue, and really the answer to that is no. One of the typical ways to have a feasible alternative is the ability to acquire additional land. And to the maximum extent that we can do that, based on the development on both sides of us, we have done that. But it's not feasible for us to acquire any additional land other than what we've already contracted for. So again, you'll see the bullet points here. The center offers numerous programs to the congregation. And folks, the important thing here is that the congregation walks to this facility. We can't just pick up and move to a different place because people have bought their homes based on the location of this facility. So that's another reason why it's not feasible for us to just simply acquire a different center. Next. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, and of course you always hear that from us, that the courts in New York have said that it's not a mathematical formula. The test is what the impact is from the variance itself, and we would submit to you that the benefits here in providing the services outweigh any potential detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. And based on the fact that we do have development all around us, that we do not feel that this is a substantial request. Next. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And generally, when we talk about that, we talk about displacement of wildlife, we talk about erosion, the possibility of flooding, and so on and so forth. And again, those things don't really apply here. We're not going to have any flooding. The drainage will all be studied as part of the site plan if the board sees fit to grant the variances, and the drainage from the new area will be studied. There won't be any problem with any environmental conditions. Next. And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant, but not dispositive of the issue as it used to be. So, you know, we always try to make the argument that it's not self-created, but even if the board feels that it is self-created because we're asking for a variance from the ordinance with respect to the setbacks, that's just one of the factors for the board to consider and doesn't automatically knock us out of the box. So I don't know if there's anything else after this. The Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000, we thought we should mention, and you're all probably very familiar with that, but it protects individuals and religious assemblies and institutions from discriminatory and unduly burdensome land use regulations. And we certainly fall under the umbrella of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. So it prohibits local governments from applying zoning laws in a way that substantially burdens the religious exercise without a compelling justification. So it really gives religious institutions just a little edge, I would say, a little more protection than non-religious institutions. Okay? I think that's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer questions that you might have. And again, if you need any additional information about the nature of the facility itself, I can certainly have the rabbi speak to you.
Could you discuss your conversations both with your neighbors to the north and south of the property, as well as your neighbors on Village Gate Court behind the facility?
The neighbor to the south is in favor of we've had discussions with them. They are in favor of it. The neighbor in the north, not so much. It would not indicate support for us. I'm not sure if anybody is here from the neighbor. It's a dentist to the north. The folks to the east, as I indicated earlier, we've had conversation with several of the people who live back there, and the association itself has indicated they have no problem with the expansion.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
I do. Just, Mr. Palumbo, the south, to the south, that's all part of the same complex, I assume. So acquiring land is, you said you would probably acquire land, but it's still part of the same complex. In that,
The land to the south is not owned by the Jewish Center, if
no,
that's.
but it's part of it. It looks like these buildings, I think, were all built about the same time.
Yeah,
so-
oh, if that's what you mean, yeah, they're all, that's why I'm saying the expansion is in the rear of all that. We're not going to be impacting anybody's buildings.
And you have the condo to the rear,
Correct.
and on the other side, I'm having trouble.
The north is the dentist's.
And you're in negotiations with the neighbor to the south for just 5 feet, or?
Correct, correct. 5 feet along the border, on our south border.
So you'd still be not in compliance with the
Right.
setback
We're,
requirement?
it's impossible for us to get the expansion that we need and be in compliance, which is why we're here.
I have a question. What was the nature of the opposition from the dentist to the north?
The opposition has to do with, sometimes there are special events and parking overflows, and it's really what it was. It's mostly about the parking.
So for services, they walk, but if they were coming, religious services, but if they were coming for all of the other programs, they'd be driving?
They could be driving, correct. And for the special events, yes.
And assuming the variances are approved, when is the projected date of completion of the project?
The plans are prepared and ready to go to file as soon as we receive approval, if we receive the approval.
And how long is it expected to take to complete?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would hope that we would certainly have it completed before the end of the year.
Is there any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll close. Who's speaking? How could we request if we do this side? Lay this one, not the rear. Hold on for 1 second. But he can't do anything without the full approval, so.
Additional 5 feet, you're under contract for now, but it's pendant on,
Correct. Correct.
so if we were to delay until your formal site plan, you can't, that would kill that.
Correct.
Has there, I think there's a concern regarding that deal falling through. If that falls through, that there may be access problems or issues for emergency vehicles to the building behind. Does that 5 feet account for that kind of access?
That, yeah, that would be one of the purposes of it. And we would work with the fire department, with Krista here. If it need be that we had to modify it somewhat, we would modify it to make sure that there was firefighting access. We certainly wouldn't want an issue. So to the extent that Krista or the fire department requires access, in addition to what we propose, we would make a modification to the building.
Condition. Would, Member Parker, would you like to suggest a condition?
Right.
You okay with it?
You have to give your name.
My name is Rabbi Eliezer Lapkovsky, and hopefully it'll go through. What I would ask is that if it does not go through, we'll move back 5 feet. If it does not go through and the sale does not go through from the neighbor, we will move our extension 5 feet in to make sure there's 5 feet. Right. Yeah. Right.
With the condition that that sale move forward.
Or the building move 5 feet off the property.
Or you,
I mean, I think we need to pick one. Would you like to make a recommendation for a second condition?
I think we also have to include a condition that it would be pending site plan approval with emergency access and those issues, approval by the fire department that you spoke with. I don't know if anyone else did, but that seems to be a concern. And that may be a concern whether or not you move the building 5 feet or not. You still may have that issue.
Would that really be appropriate for us? I mean, if it has to go to site plan, it would be up to them, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm not suggesting we usurp the
Yeah.
planning board, but I'm suggesting, I don't know, and maybe Dan can weigh in here.
Yeah.
We're able to add a condition where, variance is also conditioned upon site, that they get that site plan approval and with emergency access, because if we give that variance and they don't get, I suppose it's a moot point at that point.
Yeah, that's right. So,
Sorry.
yeah, I would,
Walk us through that.
yeah, I would make a motion to approve, but subject to Ellen's conditions.
So Ellen, could you state your condition once more for the record?
first just ask Dan, is it,
So our concern as a planning department is having the decision of the zoning board essentially direct the site layout. That would be our concern without fire weighing in. I don't think, there's a concern with the rear setback. It's just we don't know if fire can get access along the side, particularly if we don't know if 5 feet's adequate.
Adjourn for the,
Was there something submitted by the fire department? Dan?
This was not made a referral to Krista.
Yeah.
And as you're aware, Jeff, we discovered that the north and the south relief was discovered in error
Right.
on our part. Our recommendation would be the zoning board grant the necessary relief to the rear, adjourn north and south until your petitioner or your client actually files a site plan. We don't have a site plan application yet from your client.
No,
Um,
well, we wouldn't naturally until this was approved, right?
Well, you can file one now. We could get input from fire. We can get input from anyone else that may have access concerns. Um,
Well, if
The other option is, you're entering into discussions with the party to the south. Maybe there's a perpetual fire access from the south if in fact, there's an opportunity that way to access the rear of the property. The big concern is 5 sufficient? We don't know if it's sufficient.
Well, from my perspective, it seems that if the zoning board were inclined to grant the variance on the condition that we discussed, that we acquire the property or we move it 5 feet off the property line, or you add a condition that we satisfy the fire department, then that solves the problem. I
Yeah.
don't think we need to go anywhere else.
I don't disagree with that.
Make that motion.
Is there a second to that motion? Moved by Member Schubert, seconded by Member Parker, first by Member Phillips. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Pass 5-0 with that condition.
Thank you.
We're now on the next item on the agenda for 6286, 6300 Main Street. That is in regards to a variance for signage.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Palumbo. I represent the petitioner Morano in connection with the proposed sign. I wanted to just point out right off the bat that, these signs can be advertising signs, or they could be identification signs, or you can call them a lot of different things. But in this case, it truly is an identification sign. Morano, as you all know, has developed Graythorn, which is located on the north, the north end of the property. And on the south end of the property, fronting on Main Street, that's the Stoneham townhouses. So they were both developed by Morano. The reason why I say this is purely an identification sign is Morano has no further interest in Graythorn. All the lots have been sold. There's no advertising because they don't own anything. The lots are all sold. The houses are built. The last one is either going up or was just finished. So they're out. So that's not the reason for the sign. The reason for the sign is for identification, to make it easy for truck drivers, to make it easy for first responders and emergency services to find Graythorn. It's not that easy. The sign, if it's not here, could be placed on the Graythorn property, but it defeats the whole purpose of the sign for identification purposes. So let me go through. I jumped ahead a little bit, but I wanted to point that out right off the bat, that we truly believe that this is an identification sign. So what are the variances? The sign itself is 6.5 feet tall, and the code says you can't have a sign greater than 6 feet. So I spoke with my client today, and I said, do we really need to have 6.5 feet? Can we at least get it to 6 feet? And the answer to that question was yes. Let's go down to 6 feet. We'll eliminate the request for the 1/2 foot variance. So the next variance is for the total square footage, and what's allowed is 20 square feet, and what was proposed was 52 square feet. Now, when we lower the sign 6 inches, we eliminate approximately 3 more square feet of signs. So we're down to 49 square feet. So again, if you had 2 signs, one in the rear and one in the front, they both could be 20. We're asking for 49 now, which isn't a heck of a lot more than what's allowable if they were separate signs. The third sign is the point I was trying to make earlier. The third variance is the point I was trying to make earlier, and that this is considered to be an off-premises sign. This is not Graythorn property, it's the Stoneham property that the sign is placed on. So it's like having a billboard on the expressway. It's an off-premises sign. So Graythorn is sold out. There's no advertising. There's no benefit. The benefit, as I indicated, is really to the town and to the folks that are making the deliveries and the emergency responders. So the other thing I think that's important is, again, how I started. This is a whole Morano development, Graythorne and the Stoneham townhouses. The road itself that leads from Main Street to Graythorne, there's an easement so that Graythorne has access on that roadway. There's an easement over that for the Graythorne owners. So it's all intertwined. It's all Morano development. Everybody's using the same roadway. I don't think there's going to be anybody that drives by that thinks that this is an issue because it says Graythorne and Stoneham. I think that's a positive thing, not a negative thing. So when you talk about benefit versus the detriment, I don't see any detriment at all here. And the benefit is, I've already outlined a couple of times, and that's about it. Happy to answer any questions you might have. So we eliminate the one variance. We're now looking for two variances.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? Is there any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Can you please state your name and address clearly in the microphone and make sure it's written down on the podium?
Yes, sir. My name is Christopher Flatek. I'm with Quality Quick Signs, where we would be the builder of the sign. We're located at 1380 French Road in Cheektowaga. Two of the things that I'd like to add to Mr. Palumbo's points are, it is life safety with visibility. You have a 5-lane road there, and Stoneham, which cuts back through, is kind of hidden with the daycare center. And then also our client Morano bermed the front of the property. I don't know if you've been over there in the last few days, but the berms are pretty high. So the visibility, they did that for their clients for, privacy. It really takes away the look of where that road is. So having the sign up by the road will make it easier, not only for people visiting, but as Mr. Palumbo said, for deliveries and services and such like that. The reason we asked for the 6 inches, in addition, if you would consider, I know the client actually said they wouldn't, but we were also concerned about snow. And that extra 6 inches would be stone that would be coming up as compared to the sign itself. The sign is actually 4 foot by 6 foot. So that's 24 square feet for 2 properties. Okay? The stone itself doesn't do any advertising, doesn't do anything regardless, except for aesthetics. We're going to have plantings below on which snow would pile up. And just being a busy corner there, that's what we're looking at, so that we make sure that the sign is elevated for visibility during winter times. So, do you have any questions for me?
I just have a question. Mr. Palumbo already said you're withdrawing the request for 6 inches. Is that correct?
So I wore the good hat and he wore the bad hat.
Yeah, but you've withdrawn that.
Yeah, we have withdrawn it. so-
Okay, then it's not an issue.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? Okay, the public hearing is closed. I'll take a motion.
I move to approve.
Moved by member Schubert,
Second.
seconded by member Gergen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's passed 5-0. And again, that is for 49 square feet. The last item on today's agenda is 5105 Sheridan Drive regarding several variances. Can you please state your name and address clearly in the microphone and make sure it's written on the podium?
Good evening, board members. Nice to see you. David Chiesa, Executive Vice President and Project Partner with Iskolo Development. With me tonight is Sean Hopkins, who I know is familiar to you, and Nick Dulp, our Vice President of Development. So we're here to talk about a project I've been working on for more than 2 years. I've been doing this for 43 years. This is the smallest project that's taken me the longest amount of time. But here we are. Glad to be before you. Next slide, please. So the applicant is Iskolo 5117 Sheridan LLC. It's a single-purpose entity, owns this 5105 Main Street Sheridan Drive property, as well as the property next door, which is occupied by Muddy Taco, and the two houses that are on Mill Street, 553 and 543 Mill. But the project site is just a 0.85 acre 5105 Sheridan Drive parcel, which is 0.85 acres in size. So it's a small parcel. August of August of 2022, the town board did rezone the entire four parcel assemblage to DC3 from its previous zoning of motor service in R4. Next slide, please. So I should get my pointer out here. So these are the four parcels that comprise the assemblage. 5105 Sheridan Drive parcel is outlined in yellow. The 5117 Muddy Taco parcel is outlined in red. It's relevant that I point out these two parcels. As you'll see, one of the goals here is to interconnect these two parcels. They are presently separated. Next slide, please. So this is actually the second phase of redevelopment of this property. The first phase was the renovation of the former longtime Burger King that was in the location where where Muddy Taco is today. So this is the second phase. The 5105 Sheridan Drive parcel was historically used as a gas station that was succeeded by an instant oil change that ran for a number of years. The site was heavily contaminated and it was vacant for a number of years before we bought it. Our purchase triggered the remediation of the contamination on the property. And in 2018, the DEC issued an inactive letter after the site was remediated. So our plans are to take the existing former instant oil change and gas station building down, replace it with a new building that'll be a little bit larger, about 2,400 square feet. It'll be occupied by a national coffee retailer. I'm not allowed to disclose who that is, but I think you'll be able to figure that out for yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the goals here is to interconnect 5117 and 5105 Sheridan Drive, which I think will help with circulation for both properties. The site does involve a lot of new paving and landscaping as well. Next slide, please. So if you remember the old Burger King, by the time we bought it, was pretty overgrown, pretty bad shape. Muddy Taco came in and did a wonderful job working with us to renovate the property, and they're doing very well at that location. Next slide, please. So that's the existing building on the top left. You can see the bones of the original gas station, then converted to the instant oil change. And on the bottom right is just a simple rendering of the proposed new building. As I mentioned, about 2,400 square feet, single story. Next slide, please. Just some additional slides of that building. It's basically a brick building. The panel above, which looks like wood, is actually a metal panel, and then glass. This is this particular coffee retailer's newest prototype. This will be one of the first of its current version to be produced and built if we get it approved this year. Next slide, please. Okay, this site plan has taken about 2 years to evolve. The first year was working with the coffee retailer and Muddy Taco to kind of come up with a plan that worked for both of them. Then we submitted it to the town, worked through with town planning staff, Amherst Traffic Safety Board, DOT, and Erie County Highway got involved late last fall, and most of that was in working with the circulation. But let me take you through the plan. So access to the site would be from a right-in, right-out driveway on Mill Street, a entry-only driveway at this point in Sheridan Drive between the two buildings, and an exit-only driveway at the far east end of the site. The two parcels will share, or the two tenants will share a dumpster location. The most significant thing to note here, and one of the things that attracted this coffee retailer to this location, is the depth of the property, where they can get 16 cars stacking, and then there's another 225 feet before you actually get to the street. At other locations, including one nearby, hint, hint, you'll notice that the traffic typically backs up into Sheridan Drive. I work directly across the street from one on Main Street, and it's typically backing into Main Street, which is pretty scary at rush hour in the morning. So one of the attractions of this location, and one of the big advantages of this location, is that we can handle a lot of stacking for not only this retailer, but also Muddy Taco. The other good thing to note is that Muddy Taco and the retailer have different peak hours. Muddy Taco is not open in the morning. They're open until 10 a.m. Their peak hours from 12 to 1. The peak hour or peak interval for this tenant is from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. So they have complementary peak hours. So although I think one of the plans in your packet may show cars stacked up on both of these drive-throughs, that would never really occur because their peak hours are different. Also share about this. I think this about covers this one. Next slide, please. So I just put these slides in to kind of give you a glimpse of the new paving. So although this red line denotes the 5105 parcel, we will be repaving a section of the Muddy Taco 5117 Sheridan Drive parcel as well, including putting in this new driveway at this end. My battery's starting to go on my little laser here. And then the slide to the right is meant to show that we're going to be doing adding a lot of landscaping that's not currently there, and a lot of that landscaping is be up along Sheridan Drive and Mill Street to kind of create that buffer zoning that is important in the DC3 zoning district. And there'll be other landscaping throughout the site, so we'll be greening it up much more than it is today. Next slide, please. So some basic facts and figures. As I mentioned, the proposed new building will be 2,400 square feet. The existing Mighty Taco building is 2,650 square feet. So in total, it's about a 5,000 square foot development, not a big project. The combined parking will be 59 spaces, 43 customer spaces, which will all be in front of the buildings, and then 16 employee parking spaces in the back section. We'll have bicycle parking for 6. We'll be running conduit for 1 electric vehicle station. As I mentioned, we'll have drive-through stacking of 16 for the tenant at 5105 Sheridan Drive, and we'll have drive-through stacking of 10 for the Muddy Taco. Interior green space is 8.6%. I think required is 5%, so we've exceeded that. Overall green space is 21.7%, which is in excess of what's required. I went through that quickly. I'm going to let Sean take over from here and kind of take you through how we've gotten from where we started to where we are now, and then we'll be available to answer questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant. Following up on Dave's comments, as he indicated, this process began 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. It's involved input from a wide assortment of agencies, including the planning department staff, but most importantly, the access and the improved access compared to what's there today for both Mill Street, which is an Erie County highway, and Sheridan Drive, which is a New York State highway, reflects input received from both DOT and Erie County, as well as the town's traffic safety board. So we had to work collectively with all three. That took many months and many meetings. Mr. Ulatowski was privy to a lot of those discussions, but ultimately the layout that we're presenting this evening reflects their input. It's also important to note that we're actually closing a driveway on Sheridan Drive, the one closest to the intersection, and the driveway on Mill Street today is full access, is being moved further to the south and being converted into right in and right out only. And perhaps most importantly, from an access perspective, is the stacking. Again, for this national retailer, which we can't disclose, but you can guess, we're providing more than adequate number of stacking spaces on the site. We did file the variance application on February 29th of this year, and we filed the site plan application not on November 20th of this year, but last year. That's in front of the planning board this evening, and if you do grant the requested relief, we're hopeful the planning board will be in a position to approve the site plan for this exciting redevelopment project. Next slide. So what are the variances themselves? It seems a little overwhelming in that we need 11 variances, but when you break them down into categories and discuss them, we really don't think they are. 2 of them apply to what we believe are inapplicable aspects of the DC3 zoning. The town asked us to rezone the site from MS, GB to DC3, so we did that. 3 pertain to mixed-use aspects of DC3 zoning. Those new mixed-use districts created in 2019, generally speaking, envision larger parcels, mixed-use projects, ones that you've seen again and again over the course of the past couple years. 2 of them pertain solely to the fact that the property to the south at 505 Mill Street, which is the Williamsville School District bus garage, part of that's zoned R4. It really shouldn't be zoned R4, but that's okay. And then 4 of the variances are more typical, pertain to parking setbacks, lighting levels, and the location of drive-through speakers. Next slide. The DC-related variances. 1 and 2, shared access and cross street. Again, this is a small corner site. Those standards really don't apply on this type of site. We are not providing publicly accessible outdoor amenity space. Item number 3, you remember that topic was discussed in connection with 5226 and 5228 Main Street. We simply don't have room for the requirement. Ground store transparency, both on Mill Street and Sheridan. There is a deviation. We'll show you those elevations in a second. It is important to note that this project was reviewed and received a favorable recommendation from the town's design advisory board, which takes a look at architectural plans for projects in the mixed-use district. Next slide. There's the north elevation. It's important to note this is a one-story building. However, to make it look appropriate in terms of massing, it has a taller wall than you might typically have on a standalone commercial building, which is a general trend, but that results in the need for the transparency. If you actually just looked at it in terms of the first floor, you know, we're basically there. Next slide. It's the west elevation along Mill Street again, rounding that feature around the corner. There'll be an outdoor seating area. And again, high quality materials. We actually presented samples of the materials to the design advisory board. Next slide. Bus garage setbacks. So this portion here, south, which is this, which is the Williamsville Central School District Transportation Department, we need two variances. Number one, speaker location. The zoning code says if you're within 100 feet of a residential district, which again, it's zoned R4, you have to be at least 100 feet. We're at 76 feet, 8 inches, which is here. And the second one is it requires a deep lot transition when abutting a residential district, aka a single family home. We don't have that. It's simply a driveway for the bus garage. So I think those are pretty straightforward. Next slide. There are 4 remaining variances. Parking setback along Mill, 10 feet required, 3 feet proposed. We'll show you in a second. Same thing along Sheridan, 10 versus 3. Lighting levels both along Sheridan Drive and Mill Street at the right-of-way only, 0.5 foot candles maximum. We're at 2.28. And then finally, the variance that we're asking for is for the hours of operation for the drive-through facility. The zoning code states those should be limited to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. We would request the opportunity to open at 5 a.m. It's important to note that's to establish a uniform standard throughout Western New York. I actually did look online recently. It looks like some open at 5:30, some open at 6, but having the ability to open at 5 a.m. would be important. Next slide. Parking setback variances along Sheridan and Mill. This, of course, being Sheridan, and this being Mill. It is important to note that there will be ample green space. We've submitted a landscaping plan. And actually, if you measure from the distance of the edge of the parking lot to the sidewalk, which is what it feels like in terms of on-site green space, we have 10 feet along Sheridan and 15 feet along Mill Street with ample green space and landscaping there. We also have the sidewalk, and then you can see where the property line. Next slide. Lighting level variance, very minor. We just have some very minor deviations along the property line. Otherwise, all aspects, every single number there in terms of those photometric foot candle calculations complies with the code. And again, at the sidewalk, which is where you'd be walking, we comply with the standards. Next slide. So obviously, any request for area variances is governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria set forth in New York State Town Law, Section 267B3B, which requires you to balance the benefits that will be received by the applicant if the requested relief is granted and weigh those against any resulting detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. All of the variances we're seeking tonight are essential to the successful redevelopment of this site in accordance with the site plan that reflects input received over the course of the past 2 years. We can all agree that old vacant Valvoline oil change building needs to go. It's been that way long before Iskolo acquired it. So we're going to greatly improve the corner and match what we've already done next door to the east on the Mighty Taco parcel. Next slide. What are the 5 criteria? Whether or not the granting of the requested variances will result in an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties? No, we think quite clearly. Again, when you look at the variances, look at the context, look at the fact that a couple of the standards really shouldn't apply to a small site. The fact that the driveway to the south at 505 Mill Street for the bus garage is zoned R4, we think we quite clearly meet that criteria. Also important to note that Iskolo owns the 2 adjoining houses on Mill Street. As part of the review process, the town board asked us to leave those houses in place, and that's what we're doing. Next slide. Whether the relief we're seeking can be achieved or whether the benefits we're seeking can be received by some other method than the requested relief, and the answer is no. We need all of these variances. Again, the project is very well vetted. There's a list of the many agencies that have been involved to date. And again, not only the zoning board, this board, includes the Planning Department, the DAB, Traffic Safety Board, DOT, Erie County Department of Highways, et cetera, as well as input from both Mighty Taco and the National Coffee Retailer. Next slide. Whether or not the requested area variances are substantial, and the key inquiry here is whether or not there is any harm. Absolutely no harm will result from the granting the requested area variances, and in fact, again, we think all the changes are beneficial, not only to the project site and to the applicant, but to the character of that overall area. Next slide. Whether proposed variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood, again, we think it's an improvement. The DAB looked at this project very closely during its meeting on December 13th and recommended approval by unanimous vote. We did submit the short EAF with the variance application, and as I indicated previously, we'll be proceeding to the planning board for a public hearing on Thursday. There's fully engineered plans that have been reviewed and well vetted. And then the final criteria, which of course can't be determinative, is whether or not the alleged hardship is self-created. Obviously, we rezoned the site to DC3. The town asked us to do that. We basically could have done a similar project with the previous zoning without all the requested relief, but that's okay. If you look at that criteria and even find that it weighs against us, we think the overall balancing test and the remaining 4 criteria provides more than ample justification for the granting of the requested relief, and that's what we'd ask for, granting the requested area variances. And of course, if you have any questions, either myself, David, or Nick would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Does anybody on the board have a question for the applicant?
2 comments.
Sure.
Number one, kind of a giveaway on this presentation. The Starbucks sign was moved from here out of the Valvoline building.
I didn't say that.
So you got Starbucks. Second of all, and more important, is I live right in that neighborhood. And I see all the backup of the traffic on Sheridan Drive at the current Starbucks, which is absolutely horrible and dangerous.
Right.
And that's got to come to an end. And the only way it's going to come to an end if they move into another building. You've got stacking here for 16 cars. I think that's great.
And we have really, Mr. Schubert, we have about another 150 feet before you get to the road, too.
Yeah, so I think that's great, and we'd be delighted to have all those cars off of Sheridan Drive.
Thank you.
And as you said, a lot of the requested variances wouldn't have been there had it not been rezoned.
Right.
So it's kind of a,
And I do want to note, there was some benefits to the fact that it was rezoned. That's what forced us to go in front of the Design Advisory Board. The town's general trend has been to replace GB with mixed use. So I'm not being insulting in any way, but it did trigger the need for some relief that otherwise we wouldn't have had.
Assuming it is that unnamed coffee retailer. Yes.
Retailer that shall not be named.
Yes.
Voldemort.
Would the existing Starbucks still be open?
I'm going to leave that to Mr. Chad.
It's a tricky question.
They've not disclosed to us what their intention is for the other location. We can suppose what might happen, but it's not been disclosed to us as to what they would do with the other location.
All I can say is those would be quite close.
Yes.
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Does any member of the board have a comment or want to make a motion? Oh, that's right, we have to do a negative deck. Can I get a motion for a negative deck?
Second.
Moved by member Schubert, seconded by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. No opposed? And then does anyone want to make a motion for approval?
Second.
Motion by member Schubert, second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Pass 5-0. All of the variances. Could we get a motion for adjournment? Moved by member Phillips, second by member Gergen. All in favor? All right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
I named coffee retailer.